The first thing I want to talk about was the French generals who are warning of a civil war in France, which, okay, didn't know things were getting this bad in France, but, I mean, I knew they had the big problems, but civil war.
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't know France had an army.
So I guess the French just want to just win a war. So I mean they'll declare one on themselves so they can get some of their dignity back.
Yeah, but paradoxically they're still going to lose that war.
Yeah. Anyway, so this is the article. I mean I got sent this a little while ago. But
France has actually got quite a distinguished military history. I'm sorry, France.
They lost the big one. That's why they get so dumped.
What, the 100 Years' War?
No,
we lost
Second World War. Anyway. So this is the Daily Mail reporting here. French generals who call for military rule if President Macron cannot stop Islamists from disintegrating society will be punished, government declares. And you might think, as is just like the Daily Mail or whatever, they mention in here, published on the article in which they're calling for military rule, was published on the 60th anniversary of a failed coup d'etat by generals opposed to France integrating independence to Algeria. So they tried to stop Algerian independence. And okay, it might be the Daily Mail. It's not just the Daily Mail. This is a real thing. So we go to the next article. The Times also reporting on this. So it slowly got over to the Anglosphere. You can get the Times link up. Sorry, that's not the right link. But anyway, sorry. So the Times link, they just mentioned that the defense minister says there will be consequences, naturally, for those who have signed this. Because, I mean, yeah, that makes sense. Like, if you're serving in the military, you're not meant to be openly political. So, I mean, calling for a coup while you're still in the military, yeah, pretty out there. So, also, they have Le Pen's response to this. Apparently, Marine Le Pen decided to say, I invite you to join us in taking part in the coming battle, which is the Battle of France, to the people who signed this letter. Pretty spicy.
I mean, okay, so just to be clear, like I don't follow French politics on a daily basis. So whenever we get these kind of updates from France, they come in big chunks and it's always way more radical. But I'm sure that there were a sensible set of steps, presumably involving many terror attacks, that led up to them saying, well, look, actually, France is falling apart and only military rule is going to save it.
Yeah, I mean, this is going on for a while. If we can get the next one up. So this is the Times article talking about the quote, terrorist kills Paris policewoman. So apparently this
quote
is what...
terrorist.
Yeah, apparently this is what was in response to this, why the generals decided they'd warn about civil war. So a policewoman was stabbed to death by a terrorist as she returned to her station on the outskirts of Paris. I just love that the British press here are like, terrorist, I'm not too sure. But if you just go to the France 24, just any French outlet, they mention in here, a source told the outlet that the attacker shouted Allahu Akbar during the attack.
That's how you know it's not terrorism, you see.
He's just BLM, he's just anti-cop. That's a new slogan for BLM, I guess. Anyway, but as you were pointing out, this is not just a one-off that's then caused this. This is a huge problem France has been facing for years upon years. So we can get the first image up. Just so this is from the Global Terrorism Index, showing that between 2014 and 2019, the number of ISIL-related terrorist attacks and deaths in the West, and you can see France number one. I mean, making up more than 50% of all the deaths caused by terrorism. Yeah, it's not been a good time for France these last few years. They've been really suffering with.
But it's not just that, is it? It's the ghettoization and sort of
terrorism's just the peak of the iceberg.
Yeah, it's essentially the sort of colonization of these areas, though, and the fact that a few years ago we saw the riots that were happening in these ghettos, where it's just huge gangs. Looked like they were having actual battles in these areas, and it's like, right, okay. So I mean, France does appear to be falling apart. And a couple of years ago, I went to Disneyland Paris, and just walking the streets were just squads of soldiers with guns. You've
got your 6-year-old girl and then the massive 2 army guys who have to protect you from the diversity, I guess.
That's the enrichment of France has necessitated military rule, apparently.
I mean, I've had the same thing when I went to Paris with my girlfriend at the time to go and just see what it was like, and you're just walking around. Every attraction we went to, even like the bus stations, have got military guards. There are signs up everywhere. Be aware of terrorism, take precautions. And
it was the same in Strasbourg when we went to the European Parliament.
This isn't normal. This is very strange. I mean, you can see on there the United Kingdom, and we've had our problems. But good God, I mean, compared to the French,
it's literally like 6 times worse in France. But I mean, France kind of seems like an occupied country at this point.
And as you say, it's not just the terrorism. I mean, we mentioned before, it was government policy of the British government, multiculturalism. The idea we would destroy British culture and replace it with multiculturalism, which means every culture on the planet. This was also French policy. And I think it was Sarkozy or someone at the end of their term admitted, multiculturalism has failed.
Yeah, Merkel said the same thing in 2011.
Yeah, and the same time that David Cameron came out and said it, because everyone realised, this don't work.
Why did we agree to Tony Blair's idea again?
Like, surely you wanted the people who come to France to become French and integrate, not form ghettos.
In France, it's particularly a particularly strong impulse as well, because the ethos there is everyone in France is French, whether they like it or not. And so if you're going to, the idea of multiculturalism in France is actually kind of anathema to the idea of the Republic itself. I'm not here to defend French republicanism, but they are right.
Why aren't you guys,
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I don't know why the French state decided to do this stuff, but
why did we decide to do it to ourselves?
Yeah, I don't know why we did it either, but at least we didn't do it as bad as the French are. So that's why their politics is so radicalized by the looks of it. So if we can get to the article itself, so this is the petition that they signed. It's all in French, so I've had to run it through Google Translate. So sorry if some of it's incorrect, but I can't read French.
It's the way you say it. It's all in French, as if they didn't do the decency to do it in English, like a civilized country.
Am I wrong? So anyway, so this is titled "For the Return of the Honor of Our Rulers. 20 Generals Call on Macron to Defend Patriotism." And this is a bit long, so jump in whenever you want to say something.
Sure.
But it's good. And I'm going to abridge it as well, because it's just way too long. Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of the government, the hour is serious. France is in danger. Severe mortal dangers threaten it. We, who even in retirement remain soldiers of France, cannot in the current circumstances remain indifferent to the fate of our beautiful country.
God, I'm loving this. This sounds so much like French revolutionary rhetoric. This is genuinely like 17th, 18th century sounding stuff.
Yeah. Our tricolour flags are not just a piece of cloth. They symbolise the tradition, through the ages, of those who, whatever their skin colour or their faith, served France and gave their lives for it. On these flags we find gold letters the words honour and fatherland. However, our honour today lies in the denunciation of the disintegration which strikes our homeland.
Based.
You can see this is definitely, what would you call it? Colourful language or very emotional language.
Yeah.
It's not flippant at all.
No, this is very sort of, high-minded, deep and thick concepts that we're having laid on us here. These are excellent.
So he lists some of the forces that are causing this disintegration of France. Discrimination which, through a certain anti-racism, is displayed with a single goal, to create on our soil a malaise, even a hatred between the communities. It is the racial war that these hateful and fanatic partisans want. They despise our country, its traditions, its culture, and they want to see it dissolve by taking away its past and history.
So basically, you could summarise the French general statement as Sargon was right about leftism.
I know, right? It's
that's exactly what I've been saying the whole time.
This is the position of you and the let's say dissident rights or dissidents of the UK, criticisms of the Conservative Party and all the rest of it. And it's interesting that this seems to be now the mainstream of French politics.
God.
That these people are awful. They are trying to destroy France, and we need to stand against them. And they're not even asking for anything radical in here. They literally just say, enforce the laws we already have. But if you don't, civil war.
Yeah.
So he continues. Discrimination, so another one of the reasons, which, with Islamism and the suburban hordes, yikes, leads to the detachment of multiple plots of the nation to transform them into territories subject to dogmas contrary to our constitution. So the mass Islamist ghettos that are promoting Islamism instead of being French and are saying you should not integrate into France.
Yes, because they didn't integrate into being French, because they were invited under the rubric of multiculturalism. So you can have your Islamist culture and we'll have our French culture, and why would we want that? Yeah,
I don't know if it's the translation, but the very politically incorrect characterization of suburban hordes. Good God, France is a different place. So he continues, another point. Discrimination, because hatred takes precedent over brotherhood during demonstrations where the power uses the police as an auxiliary agents and scapegoats in the face of French people in yellow vests expressing their despair. So the fact that Macron's been, using the police to batter down the yellow vest protests, it's very a French thing. It's
the yellow vest protest that went on for like a year continuously that nobody reported on.
Yeah, I mean, France is a place where protests go on all the time and can be violent all the time.
Yeah.
So it's I can see some of the argument for
Sure.
not covering it so much, but the
Sure.
fact it was so suppressed was strange. Yeah, but otherwise, I mean, there's 2 points that the Islamist immigration hasn't been perfect, and also the fact that the far left here, the anti-racists as they call them, are trying to destroy the country and its history. Yeah, totally true. Islamo-leftism is cancer. So they continue. Perils are mounting. Violence is increasing day by day. Who would have predicted 10 years ago that a professor would one day be beheaded when he left college?
It's a great question. And the thing is, it's like he is just the latest in a long line of people who have been just murdered in the most medieval ways. Like, there have been so many examples of, like, priests and nuns being murdered by Islamists, and you can't pretend that this doesn't have religious dimensions in the minds of the people doing the attacking. You don't kill a nun unless you're attacking Christianity itself. And then you've got the cathedral. What was the cathedral? That was on fire? Notre Dame, that's it. The mysterious fire. It's like,
People have suspicions about. But the priest one you mentioned, I mean, that was a guy, I think it was like an Algerian teenager, killed the priest and then slowly cut off his head with a penknife, and then, to stand up with the head.
Yeah.
So, normal things.
Yeah.
Normal things.
I can't help but agree with the generals.
Yeah.
They are right that these problems exist.
It's like when I was in Russia, I met a guy called Mikhail Svetov. He's a libertarian party guy in Russia.
Back in your teenage years.
And he made the point that he used to live in Paris, and now he's back in Moscow, Russia. Mm-hmm. And he made the point, it was like, if you told me 10 years ago Paris would be less safe than Moscow, I thought you were crazy.
Well, yeah.
And now he's out there living in Russia, and he's like, what is the West doing? Because it's embarrassing to him as well, trying to promote liberalization of Russia.
It doesn't exactly present the strongest case, does it? When we're at the point where we're chopping off children's genitals and allowing terrorists to run rampant in the streets.
And the immigration officials are like, yeah, come on, more, please. Yeah. Like, no.
Would you like some Western liberalism? No, thank you.
Yeah. This is what Western liberalism is, shoot me.
But it doesn't have to be this way, but anyway.
Yeah. So they continue, the generals in here. Those who lead our country must imperatively find the courage necessary to eradicate these dangers. To do this, it is often sufficient to apply existing laws without weakness.
Again, what we have been saying since day one is just, if you apply the laws fairly, then all of these problems go away, because the communities to which these laws are being applied realize they don't have a special pass anymore. They get treated like everyone else, and they will change their behavior.
It should not be a privilege to be an ethnic minority.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's exactly right.
We've seen this continuously. I mean, the grooming gangs is the worst example, in which there were Pakistani men grooming young girls and raping them. And every inquiry we've had into this issue up and down the country, routinely the criticism from the police, why didn't they act? Because, I mean, that's the biggest crime, which is why the state didn't act, even though they knew. And routinely we get from the officers, because I didn't want to be called racist.
Yeah.
I don't care. Apply the law.
Yeah.
It's not difficult. I mean, these are rapists.
Yeah, why is this difficult? It doesn't even matter if you are a racist. Let's assume all of the police are racist. Okay, so you're a racist, but when you see a man raping a child, you still have to arrest that man. Don't care how racist you are, don't care how brown he is. Don't know why I have to say that.
And similarly,
I'm sure the French generals are the same. Why do we have to say this?
Don't shoot the terrorist, he's got brown skin. I mean, it's a ridiculous standard.
Yeah.
So I assume similar things have been found in France. So they end with this. There is no more time to procrastinate. Otherwise, tomorrow, the civil war will put an end to this growing chaos, and the deaths for which you will bear the responsibility will number in the thousands. Whew! And that's 20 generals, many of them are ex-generals, and then I think it was 1,000 members of the army, some of them ex, some of them in the army. So, I mean, that's the big, like members of the army saying this, officers, have written this petition and then obviously sent it to the French government.
I mean, you can't really just ignore this. This is pretty serious, and...
I mean, what a bombshell.
Yeah, it's massive. It's staggering.
I mean, I remember when we went to Poland, we interviewed Korwin Mikke, and we were like, oh, come, it was in the middle of the Brexit thing. We were like, we don't know what's going on. Like, the politicians are trying to stop Brexit, even though the Democratic vote. And he sort of jokingly responded, just try to convince some generals. We want to laugh, but like.
He wasn't joking.
I guess he wasn't joking. Like, the French are going to do this instead. They're going to convince some generals, and that's how they're going to solve the problem of Islamo-leftism if the government doesn't just employ the law. Good God, France is radicalizing.
But the thing is, look at the death rate. Look at the number of atrocities that happen. Look at the scale of it. France has had more immigration than we have. And we have it bad. So it's like you can see that things are getting really serious. And they're absolutely right. It's an attack on the Republic. It's an attack on France itself, which means it's an attack on French people. They have to do something about it. They're obligated. They are duty-bound to do something about this.
And it's not like it's a conspiracy theory or anything. Like, the Islamo-leftists will literally tell you, we hate France, we want to destroy its history, tradition, that's why we tear down the statues and whatnot. We want to create a new world.
That's why Macron's government is just openly saying Islamo-leftism is killing France.
Yeah, I mean, a big surprise.
Yeah, I mean, at least they can all agree on the problem.
Yeah, which is nice. It's a shame that, I mean, not even the so-called right, the Conservative Party, can agree on this problem in Britain. Again, it's embarrassing. God save France. I mean, these people at least understand
remember
their
at the what was the school where the Muslim guy said, you either allow us to do this or we become like France.
Yeah. That was up north. I can't remember the name.
It was. I can't remember the name of it, but it was just that line that struck me. It's this, or we become like France, and I'm like, oh well.
I mean, that's a threat.
Yeah,
I mean, that's him saying, look.
Yeah, it's because the Muhammad cartoon.
We will just start murdering people in the streets.
Yeah,
wonderful. I'm glad we imported loads of you people who want to be Islamists. Fantastic. So the response to this, I don't know very well because of course we're not French. We're not in tune with French political culture. But I have seen some documentation in English of what has happened. So this is Bloomberg here, who have a very biased article in which they're against Marine Le Pen, but they do have some quotes that are true. So they have the fact that no one really takes this as evidence that a coup d'état is imminent. Like, no one really expects this is true, that they're going to be like, right, if you don't do nothing, we're going to do a coup. I mean, sure, it's not nothing, absolutely, but many of these generals are ex-generals. They're not currently serving in the army. And there was the point being made by the defense minister that they're not taking this too seriously, the government, or at least that's their public line.
Yeah,
because
that's their public line.
Because
you're
all ex-generals, therefore this is your opinions and you represent just yourselves, not the army. But we're also going to crack down on all the people in the army who did sign this. It's like, right, but who do they represent then?
Yeah,
you can't fob them off.
But I mean, they must know enough about French revolutionary history to know that you can't simply say, well, you're an ex-general, therefore you're a nothing. These people can quite often raise troops. Yeah. It
seems maybe bigger than they're making out, but
yeah.
No one really. My understanding is no one really took it as like they're literally threatening a coup. So her response when she says, "Well, march with us," if you do take it as being a literal threat to a coup, then it does look kind of bad. So the argument is she kind of miscalculating here because she's going to run for president next year, and if she's calling for a coup, it don't look great, but that's a matter of opinion, I suppose. So she says...
well, hang on a second. I mean, how do we think the French public feels about this?
That's polling.
They might be pro-coup.
They probably are. I mean, they're French.
Yeah, so. Exactly. That's what I mean.
So they say here that Marine Le Pen gave an interview with France Info on Tuesday and denied that the officers had effectively threatened a coup d'etat. So she was sort of trying to back down on the idea that they were... really saying that.
And then she starts going down on the polls.
So how are the polls? So all I have is just the polling, because it's not for a year that the presidential elections are taking place. But if we go to the next link, the political polling, and if you can scroll down to the second bar graph, so this is just approval of Macron, and here you can see Marine Le Pen 26%, Macron 25%. So I mean, neck and neck, pretty much. I mean, it's not like she's some fringe candidate. She's the main candidate for the opposition to Macron, and she's endorsing this letter. And
from an outside perspective, it doesn't even look good for Macron either, because it seems that he's essentially adopted her political position.
Yeah, because as we've been documenting, he's coming out and saying, actually, Islamo-leftism is destroying France and we need to crack down on it.
Yeah, and didn't he imply that she was going soft on Islam?
Yeah, so, I mean, Macron comes out and he's like, yeah, Islamo-leftism is a problem, we need to crack down on that. And Marine Le Pen's like, it's my opinion, you're stealing my... So then
calm down, Macron, they've got human rights.
So the what was it, I think it's the Interior Minister went on a debate with Marine Le Pen on TV and started bashing off about how Marine Le Pen was soft on Islam. It was really weird. And then Marine Le Pen turned around and be like, well, whoa, hang on, like, they have civil rights, we're not going to force them to convert or anything.
They're human beings, Macron.
At the point of a gunpoint.
Next propaganda thing is noted Islamophile Marine Le Pen. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, Muslims have civil rights too. But she's right. I mean, if you want to come out and say...
She's right, they do have civil rights.
If you want to say we're going to convert them at the point of a sword, Macron, I think that's a bit too far, lad. There were also claims from his government they were looking into giving, Muslim children a number each, so they could track whether or not they would become radicals. Does he think Muslim children are suicide bombers, all of them?
Oh my God.
Giving them numbers as well. It's very the Holocaust-esque.
Yeah, it's not good. Well, you can tattoo it on their forearms, Macron. I'm just saying, don't.
Yeah, but Jesus, the level of radicalization in France, it does reflect the level of terrorism and social problems they've got.
Yeah.
It is extreme, but it's extreme for a reason. It's not coming out of nowhere.
It would be nice to not get to that point and just democratically solve these problems elsewhere.
Yeah,
using France as a terrible example.
British politicians, that's our future if we don't do anything about it.
Yeah. If you enjoyed this segment from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can watch the full broadcast live every weekday at 1 p.m. UK time on lotuseaters.com.